Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session with your host,
Michael Rearden.
Great. So basically, just want to get into your work, Phobia Freedom Formula Coach, and you're just helping people get out of their phobias, their way of thinking.
Phobias, fears, anxieties, and in terms of business. So what do you focus on? Do you focus on business?
No, we focus on mindset.
Oh, perfect.
So basically,
We're going to have quite a conversation.
I'm looking forward to it because when it
mindset
comes
doesn't
to
work. I used to be trained as a mindset facilitator. Mindset, pardon my French here, but mindset is bullshit. And I've got a story about that and evidence.
Let me hear the story.
Okay, the story was I was trained up as a life skills coach over 4 decades ago. 4 years after I became actually it's 5 years technically, a life skills coach, I saw that there was some gaps in the life skills. It was well researched by the government of Canada, spent 42 million, found 362 core competencies called life skills, and they then went forward and the funding was cut. I continued on because I started Life Skills College, and I thought mindset would be the best thing. In fact, back in the day, it was the best thing since sliced bread, supposedly. Unfortunately, my dad went into a coma following open heart surgery. And when the doctors told our family that my dad had a 99% chance of never getting out of the coma, I thought, okay, so that whole piece would be fine because I think I could use mindset to get out of this. I couldn't get out of the funk no matter what I did. So long story short, I went to my mindset facilitator and she walked me through the same exercises I put myself through. And at the end of that time, she told me I just didn't believe enough. Life Skills College, our student population, 80% of them were potentially suicidal. So if I told them that they just didn't believe enough, somebody would die. They'd just kill themselves. So that was one of the major turning points. I'd already started on things that became what are now mind models. But one of them was the pivot post. One of the first ones that I developed was the pivot post. And the pivot post actually engages people in showing them how to change the direction of their life. I was at the college and I could test mind models. The mind models that are out there now, every one of them has been tested to work 80% of the time or better. In 2020, February 3rd, the Association of Psychological Science released a paper on mindset. Is mindset living up to the claims, more or less? I'm paraphrasing the title. The upshot of that article was their research that they'd done, and they've got it all laid out there, and all the science and how it was done, and blah, blah. Mindset works 1% of the time, at best. And unfortunately, at worst, it can hold you back 12%, like it's a 12% reduction in your probability of success. So I knew that from personal experience because my mindset blew up with my dad going into a coma. I couldn't get it back. I did everything that I could. Fortunately, I had life skills, and fortunately, I was at the college and could do the research because I was head of research and development there and figured out what actually works. And that's where, mind models were born, literally from that kind of experience. Well, that experience.
What did you expect or what did you use in the mindset aspect to help you get out of that funk with your dad being in a coma?
We had exercises. This is like going back now 40 years ago. And it was like we went through a bunch of different ones, affirmations, a belief building, exercises on focusing on positivity, being able to get yourself focused going forward. None of that, my apologies. None of that worked. And so,
So yeah, no. Like, that's definitely a good foundation for our conversation today. I do want to get a bit of background on you. I know we talked about like you did some life skills coaching and things like that, but
yeah,
tell us who you are, how you fell into the work a little bit. I know you live in Canada right now, so of course, just kind of, tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help.
well, who I am is still Blair Dunkley. Long story. Well, it's a very long story because I started helping people. My mother was into mental health, and she was volunteering, and she was a social worker, and I got drug along on her different little things. Like she started one of the earlier places where they took patients from one of the mental health hospitals around Edmonton here and took them out to summer camps and started giving them a variety of experiences. So my mother, Madeline, was a major influence in my life in my early years. And she actually was the person that was selected to go out and take the training. She was already a social worker, but take training to become a life skills coach, and then a trainer of life skills coaches. So she got trained up to do that, and eventually a master trainer where she could train me to go right up through the ranks. And over 35 years, well, actually over 7 years, that's what I did is I went from starting off as a life skills coach to a coach trainer to a master trainer of life skills coaches, and going through all of that process. And along the way, I needed to get to master trainer, I needed to do research. So there was a gap in what I saw in how life skills worked, and that was with the mind and questioning. So a fundamental piece of my research is around the area of question concepts, where I wound up being able to figure out that there are only 6 fundamental question concepts. And each question concept has 4 portions to it. And each one of the 4 parts to it are the same from question concept to question concept, but each one has a unique version of that, such as the function. Every question concept is a function. A who function is a name of a person. It's not the name of a table or a chair or anything else. It's always the name of a person. A what always generates a list of one or more things or events only. That's all it does. Why question concepts always generate reasons, excuses, rationalizations, and justifications. And with why question concept, it's 100% past base. So when can you make change happen? Past, present, or future. Can you change the future?
You can change the trajectory.
Perfect. But when do you make the change in your trajectory?
You have to do it in the moment.
Yes, 100% of the time. Most people don't know that. So very well done. They think they can change the future. They believe they can change the future. But they can only change the trajectory of their future by changing in the present moment. Now, mindset focuses on what mostly other people have done, and they try and share with you their model of the world. Neuroscience has now shown that that model is flawed, because just because one person believes it doesn't make it true for the other person. And what happens here is that part of the brain you generate wiring actually takes you from somebody else's past into trying to lock that in somehow into your present with a future orientation. But all you wind up is this future orientation because you do not have the wiring in your brain to literally go out there and hold yourself firmly in the present while you're making changes. That's how come mindset does not work well. At best, 1%. So it works, just not well. But I needed to test the mind models because we had 80% of our population at the college was potentially suicidal. And lives depended on it. I accidentally had a student, well, a postgrad from, not postgrad, a master's. Anyway, a guy in mathematics that was studying statistics at the university. He'd already had masters, so I don't know if it's working on his doctorate or whatever, but he was way up there. But he was also going through some mental health issues and stress, and he too was suicidal. And I was working on my stuff there, and he said, "So what are you working on, Blair?" Well, I was crunching some numbers from one of the little tests that I did on one of the mind models to see how effective it was, what percentage of effectiveness it had. And he said, "So what are you looking for?" "I'm looking for something around 80%, 75, 80%, maybe a little higher." I said, "That's interesting." And he said, "So you're working on something that helps people become or get out of being suicidal?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How many opportunities, just randomly, how many times when you go out there on your interventions, which we did, how many times do people give you before they get you out and try and kill themselves?" I said, "Well, you showed up here, and how about you write down your number and I'll write down my number on a piece of paper. And you tell me how many attempts you'd give me and I'll write down my number." So we did 1, 2, 3. We held up the piece of paper each, and lo and behold, we both wrote down 3. And he went, "Man, that's amazing. And I know you're working with structured evaluations and how to evaluate yourself balanced and fairly." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you know that my statistical research, that I was doing back in the day, well, not back in the day, but at the university, was about learning equations." So he was doing work with fractals and trying to pair fractals with statistics and doing stuff. But he said, "Blair, if you do 3 functional attempts and you evaluate things effectively 3 times, and you test something out 3 times, the probability of you getting to that breakthrough moment is over 99% probability, almost 100%. And I mean, it was a jaw dropper for me. I just sort of felt like that's what people were giving me, was sort of 3 attempts. It was a gut feel, but he's now adding science and stats to it. And I was blown out of the water. And it was like, holy crap. If you teach people how to functionally use a mind model called evaluation versus judgment, you stop them from self-judging, because I have yet to see somebody who is going through a evaluation, well, a judgment, going through suicide attempt, who is not judging themselves. So they're putting a lot of stuff in there. And at the same time, somebody who's going through that attempted suicide or suicide attempt is also stuck in a why question concept. And that means they're stuck in the past, judging themselves. And by the way, every time we had thousands of people through the college, we had 1,000 people through a year, and we went for 35 years. So anyway, bottom line there is, people who are depressed literally are stuck in the past, and almost inevitably are also stuck in their why. Why me? Why this? Why don't I? Why do I? Why? Everything why based. It's one of the worst questions you can ask. Simon Sinek's stuff around find your why. I've gone into businesses, so many businesses who have gone into that back in the day, and so many of them are stuck because they can't figure out their why. And what's stopping them is because why holds people stuck in the past. And I've got the science I'm backing it up. I teach people all about question concepts and the research. That research, just for question concepts alone, took me 6.5 years to do. And I thought it was a slam dunk. In fact, I started out, figuring out life skills, had this thing called 1 page in a over 500 page manual saying, information seeking questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I went, okay, well, this should take me, I don't know, 6 weeks, maybe 6 months to do research around this and figure this stuff out. So I thought, hey, the quality of the question asked matters. And I found 3 research papers on it. 2 of them said, yes, it does, and it matters. But both of those papers were at conflict with each other. So what one said contradicted what the other one said. And then I read a third one, and it said there is no statistical correlation to that. And I thought, okay, that one's got, the other 2 are more in alignment with what I'm thinking I want. So maybe they just screwed up how they put their research together. So being a smart guy, I thought, okay, I'll go out there and I'll do it myself and see what I could do. So I ran a 3-month experiment, figured out how to qualify and quantify questions that my group members were asking and the quality of the questions asked and everything else. Took all of the data, crunched it all, and was a little concerned. Math was not my strongest suit. Anyway, I took it back to my math professor at the university, stats, and he said, Blair, really good work. Great job. This is like perfect work. You figured out that this has absolutely no statistical significance whatsoever. And I go, man, it's like the whole thing, all that 3 months just went up in smoke because the quality of the question asked does not matter that much. We think it does. It really does. In individual situations, it can, but if you just take it over months of trying to increase the quality of the question, it's got very little significance because you will shift how you ask or what questions you ask more than the quality of the question asked. Besides, quality of questions asked are way too subjective. So what I did, I remember I was sitting in my office, crumpling up my research, lobbing it through the air, at the garbage can. And it hit me like, bam, just one of those epiphany moments. What if my research is just too complicated? What if the question or the research needs to be simpler? What if it's just the question you ask makes the difference? And wham, I started to redo my whole thinking about it. And I needed to define the concepts of the questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I thought this is like a slam dunk compared to what I just did. Unfortunately, that was when I started my 6.5 years of research on the question concepts, and it took me that long to figure this stuff out. And it's fundamental, and it's unique research. In fact, Dr. David Redekop reviewed my work. He's a fellow, well-respected psychologist, and he wrote his PhD dissertation, literally this whole stack, 5,000-word dissertation on all known forms of psychology, both Eastern and Western. And it took me 2 years to find somebody who was an expert that could review my work. And he happened to be in the same city I was, in fact, living at the time, only about 1.5 miles away from where I was living at the time. It was mind-blowing. Anyway, I found him. I called him up and I said, nice to meet you, Dr. Redekop. Would you mind reviewing my work? He did. And he said, Blair, nobody has put this body of work together until you. This is a unique piece of work, and I've looked long and hard. There are parts of your work and research that I can go, oh, that's over here. This is this guy's work. That's that guy's work. But nobody has put it together as a total package. And I'd actually gotten it down so that I could summarize it down to a single page, a single graph, and have it all there and available. And that was, mind-blowing for him and highly, highly effective. So that's where everything really got started. Creating the mind models was all a spin-off of the question concepts. I started recognizing the pairing of question concepts with belief systems because I thought beliefs were really powerful. They are, don't get me wrong. Beliefs can be very powerful. But in terms of mindset, I'm sorry. They are not effective, primarily if you're trying to believe your way or visualize your way to success and money and a great relationship. They go, visualize yourself in a great relationship. Visualize yourself being rich. Do that. And I go, okay, there was a test done numerous times. It wasn't a test, it was studies done. And I refer to it as the basketball thing. Stanford University did this one and a number of others, like a lot of others. And it's the basketball one. I don't know if you've heard about it or not. But a quick thing for your audience is you get 90 people together. Take them all into the gym. They all shoot baskets. And you get the percentage of their effectiveness in the basket, in their shooting. And then you determine, you divide that 90 into 3 groups. One, you ask, don't do anything for the next 30 days. Don't shoot a basketball, don't do anything. The next group, you have them go out and come to the gym and practice for 20 minutes a day shooting baskets. And the third group walk through and were trained on visualizations. And, they went through that for the next 30 days. So what happened? Well, as you can guess here or surmise, the first group that didn't practice, didn't do anything, their numbers basically didn't change at all. But this is double blind, so that wasn't actually the base. The base was the second group. When you actually practice, that was deemed to be 100% improvement. What do you think the improvement was for the people that visualized? Any idea, Michael?
The same as the people who didn't do anything.
Not quite. It came in statistically on a bunch of different ones that I've seen. Nothing greater than 98%, but between 92 and 98%, which is still a huge improvement compared to the people that did nothing. So you can visualize and do that. And I would go out to different speakers and see them telling the audience all this. And all you got to do is visualize yourself making all this money and making that $1 million, and it will happen. Well, no, there's a flaw in that. If you go back to the study with the basketball players and you take a look at that, every single person there already knew how to shoot a basketball. If you're going to somebody and asking them to make $1 million, this will work if they've already made $1 million before. Just like if they've already shot a basketball, they know what to do and how to do it. Now it's about improving the process. Visualizations work great for improving processes, not creating it from scratch because you're just inventing it in your mind. And that's one of the major reasons that mindset doesn't work, because you cannot put mindset or, the belief, even an ineffective goal in front of the behaviors that get it. You can't just manifest that stuff. It doesn't work that way. Dr. Andy Huberman of Huberman Labs, he's on YouTube, and he's done research in that. He's a neuroscientist. And I love neuroscience simply because neuroscience comes together and makes things work highly effectively, like super effectively, science-based changes. How the brain, if the brain, what fires together, wires together. It's one of the big fundamentals of, well, not big, but one of the many fundamentals in neuroscience and neuroplasticity. Well, the interesting thing here is you need behaviors in order to change beliefs. That's according to Andy Huberman. So you can't change, if you don't change your behaviors, your beliefs will more or less just keep rolling on. Or you try to behave, or you try to believe, I believe this, I believe this, I believe this. But if you don't change those behaviors, it doesn't matter that you're trying to believe this new thing or telling yourself you're going to do it until you start changing your behaviors. That's when things will happen, and not until then. And people say, well, believe and your behaviors will change. It doesn't work that way. It's the other way around. Change your behaviors and your beliefs will naturally adjust. That was what I spent 17 and a half years researching as well, so that you can change your behaviors. And when you change your behaviors, your beliefs must follow, because there's externally verifiable evidence that you're experiencing where you go, hold it, I believe this, but what actually happens is this. Yeah, when you change your behavior, your beliefs will follow. And that's powerful. And all the research that I did into mind models always puts it into that order. Everything that I do, and one of the big ones is the 3 E's. Well, it's actually 3 mind models that I put into a mind model stack. And that stack is called the 3 E's. The first mind model pair in that is effective versus ineffective. So if you stop judging yourself, or if you judge yourself a lot and you're going right, wrong, good, bad, all of this other stuff that people do to judge themselves, and you just change it from right, wrong, good or bad to effective or ineffective, or test it again, virtually identical results, that works or that didn't work. You don't judge. It's external to you. People view work as something that they do. It's not them. People look at, effective is something that's out there, not them. So that's what we want to have it so that it's something that we perceive as being observable by yourself and others. And you say, yeah, that's effective, or that's ineffective. So you do that whole thing. And then you go to the next mind model is external versus internal. Is it externally verifiable? And I just sort of went through that with effective and ineffective. But that external verifiability makes it so that others can literally see what you're doing. Can you videotape yourself? Can you record yourself? Can you get external evidence other than having your own opinion? Your own feelings, even your feelings, your internal feelings, are not reliable enough yet until you can actually get them externally verified. So the last one is evaluation versus judgment, which I shared a little bit earlier. And when you pair those 3, holy crap, what a powerful cocktail. You start off with effective versus ineffective, external, internal, evaluation, judgment. If you just stick with the 3 E's there, effective, external, and evaluation. I've seen so many people, their lives have changed just with those 3 mind models. It's amazing. So that's my work. That's what I'm doing. Trying to get the mind models out to people and get them to do things that are effective in their life. And I've worked with like 4 billionaires and hundreds of people that are multimillionaires, and created numerous multimillionaires. So, and I think I've got one guy that I started him out about 17, 18 years ago, and he was doing gross revenue for his company was only 400,000 a year. Personal take home around 40. First year I worked with him, he went from 400,000 to 2 million, and he'd been stalled out at 400,000 was one of his better years and whatnot. He went on from there, and he's likely going to be my first billionaire that I helped create. So I'm very proud of him and happy that he's gotten so much use out of that. So anyway, so
I do want to go back to what we talked about earlier a little bit about the phobia aspect.
sure.
So someone is dealing with suicidal thoughts, negative thoughts. They have these feelings of wanting to harm themselves, right? Maybe even like another person. Would you say those ideas are good or bad?
I don't go for good or bad, as I just explained, because that's judgmental. So I'll say that those are highly
just saying, if someone ends their life, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Sorry, I just really can't. That's pure judgment. And I've worked with people. Like I had a female Anglican minister the second year that I was coaching. I was 22 at the time, and she was 42. She found out that she had terminal cancer. And she was really, really upset with God because all of the stuff she wanted to do, her life, and it was throat cancer to boot. So back in the day, that was terminal. And she was just given that. And I was at the ripe old age of 22. She was the first person that came she wanted to talk to was me. And then even before she told her husband. So, which was bizarre. But anyway.
If someone was on the side of a bridge about to jump off, would you stop them?
Yes, I would, because I believe that.
So that act is of them trying to do something to harm themselves is negative to you. Why would you intervene?
It is absolutely ineffective, because that shows me an unresourceful state. They don't know how to get past where they are. And every person that I've worked with who is suicidal, I have been there. I can't say this exactly. I've been at consulting with a family on assisted suicides, 2 of them. I can't find an argument against that at the time, because they are terminal. They're in a ton of pain. And it's just, when are they going to pass? It's not if anymore. It's absolutely clear they're going to pass. So that's how come I said it, good, bad, right, or wrong. I've seen both sides, and I'm not going to pass judgment. But
do you believe you're going to live forever?
Sorry?
Do you believe you're going to live forever?
No, hell no. I'm very mortal. So
if someone is terminal, it just means it's their time?
Yep.
So if someone's trying to jump off the bridge, is it not their time?
No, it's not necessarily their time. It could be. It really could be. But at the end of the day, the probability of that kind of termination of life indicates to me that they don't know how to manage themselves, their mind, and their emotions, and their internal pain. Because one of the commonalities I've seen with everybody that I've seen who is suicidal is the emotional condition that they're in is even worse than the physical conditions that they're in. And that is usually the cause of the desire to take one's life. So that level of emotional trauma is usually indicative of not being able to manage themselves and the resources around them to be able to get themselves through whatever situation they're in. They don't know quite how to get themselves out of it. And that's usually they're stuck in a why and the past, and taking the past and projecting that past into their future. And when you take a past and you project it into the future, and you can't see any ability to change it because you have to be present to be able to perceive change, then the issue with that is hopelessness is rampant right there. You feel hopeless. You feel completely stuck. But if you change your internal questioning and start asking yourself a different set of questions and begin getting curious, that can cause your brain to get unstuck from your desire to end your own life to become curious about what else might be possible. Some people are so past it that they don't want to get there. That takes an outside party, usually somebody like myself or somebody who intervenes in suicide prevention, to ask questions to cause them to get to the present, but can hear the difference between somebody in a past future and somebody who can get themselves present and see opportunities going forward. I always say people have to get themselves into the present, forward facing, not in the past, projecting into the future, forward facing. Because if that's the case with hopelessness, the relief comes with death. If you're in the present, forward facing, and you're looking forward, your relief comes with opportunity, with curiosity, with hope, with getting resourceful, because you know you can pivot. You know it's not going to just happen. It's going to be able to be shifted incrementally forward. And when you do that, so much is possible. So much is possible.
I don't think there's any shame in if someone's trying to do something negative to themselves, to look at it as there's so much more potential, as you just said, right? Like, there's so much more to it. And, there's no shame in saying that if someone has a thought that they're dealing with emotional trauma and they're living in and they're ruminating in the past, that we should be looking at the present, right? That, that could be viewed as judgmental because it's going on your own views and ideals versus what they truly want. Because if
in 2 seconds, you're jamming concepts together. Sorry about that, but you're putting concepts together. And
Which
I
ones?
agree with you. I don't
Which
think
concepts?
they're okay. When you take the past and you go, let's take a look at how they are and where they're going. And let's assume that they're suicidal. And their perception of the present is needing to kill themselves. But is that a perception of the present or the actions in the present that they want to take based on their projected view of their life? In other words, there is no hope. There is no way that it can possibly get better. But like I said, when I was at 2 assisted suicides, there was no way that it could get better. They were terminal. They wanted to go out, with dignity, not with just having their bodies fold up and eventually die and being completely out of control. And they wanted to say goodbye their way to this world. And I go, Jesus, that took courage. And it's wrapped my head around the whole idea of, what's appropriate. So I'm really going, hold it. I just think if somebody chooses to no longer live, but they're choosing to no longer live because they are not resourceful, that's a gap in opportunity. And they may not know how to wrap their head around it. But if somebody has lived a very reasonably full life or is terminal, I'd go, okay, they're timing their own departure. That's it. I got
So
no
if
issue with
that
that.
terminal person was on the bridge and you didn't know that they were terminal, would you try to stop
Would I question them? Would
them?
I
No.
talk to
Would
them?
you try to stop them is the question, because you see someone on the bridge about to jump. Previously, you said you would stop them. So morally, you know that's incorrect. Now, you don't know their backstory. You don't know if they're terminal or not, but you know they're about to do something dangerous. So would
I
you
know
stop
that
them?
they're going to do something dangerous, yes, because
Hmm.
they're going to jump. Now, do I know the circumstances? No.
So
Would
why
I
would you stop them?
would I stop them?
You said
Um,
earlier that you would stop them.
and that's correct. I did say that. And when you add in the other thing is the backstory is that they're terminal, I would give them alternatives because at least here in Canada, there are alternatives to jumping. And that,
So you would rather them end their life medically than physically jumping off a bridge.
no, I wouldn't. I just want to make sure to the best of my ability that they're not taking their life just because they don't have choices.
So if someone's on the bridge and you say don't jump and they say I'm terminal, you say go ahead.
No, I say, wow, that's amazing. You're terminal. Do you know? Would you like to talk about it or do you just want to jump? And they say, I just want to jump. Okay. Hey, here's this thing. Okay. What actually happened to me
Let me
is
hear it.
this. Okay. Here's a story, a true story. Back in the day when I was at Life Skills College, I was running a group and I had a bunch of things. I was coaching a group, and one of my other coaches, I was senior coach at the college, and I was called into another group. And when I came back there had been an argument and a fight, and one of the people was fed up with everything, screaming and yelling and carrying on. We were in the second story office in Edmonton here. We had windows that were open and backing onto a paved alleyway. And it was, like I said, 2-story window. And I came into the room to see one of my students screaming at the group, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. And I said, hey, what's going on here? And he says, everybody's doing all of this stuff and I'm tired of this. And I came in here and I did all this and like all of the backstory that he just dumps. And then he says, I'm going to kill myself. And I said, okay, you go ahead and jump, but you're going to break your leg. So it won't be too hard for me to track you down and get you into hospital anyway. So go ahead, jump. 2 stories, like, about 15, 20 feet. He's got to go head first. Where he was not to do a swan dive, but to sort of shoot himself out. The odds are he's going to break a leg, break bones, do all of that. But yeah, go ahead, jump. And everybody's looking at me. Oh my God, don't say that. Go, well, he's not planning it well enough to actually kill himself. Very low probability of that. So jump, damage yourself, learn from it. People need to make mistakes in order to learn. We don't learn until we are open to making mistakes. So mistakes are required for learning. That was a true thing.
Yeah. So if there was death certain, you're not 2 stories, you're not 15 feet, you're, let's say, 200 feet up, right? It's more dangerous now, right?
Absolutely.
We now have a dilemma. Would you still tell him to jump?
In that particular situation, I probably would have.
You would have told him
Because
to jump.
he was not the backstory that I was aware of already. He was not terminal. He was doing all of these things. He just didn't have the life skills to cope with the pressure, but he was learning and he slid back a little bit. And I'd already had 4, I was going to say 3, but I had 4 clear situations where he had already demonstrated improvements. Now, was he forgetting about his improvements? Yes. Did he forget about the opportunities that he had in his life? Yes. And that's one of the things that happens when people are shutting down. When people get ready to kill themselves, their prefrontal cortex, like they're mostly into their emotional selves. And so their prefrontal cortex is a little browned out. So they're not thinking as clearly as they would like to. That's actually science. So you can literally get what's referred to as a brownout. And your brain is not clear. At both of those assisted suicides, clear mind, very clear in both of them. I couldn't. Do I prefer life? Yes. Do I prefer life in all circumstances? No, I don't. I prefer what's effective for people. And,
So if someone is unhappy, they did everything, they're not hopeful for the future, and they're not just thinking clearly, even though they have done the work, then it's okay for them?
your logic is definitely flawed
Okay,
because
let me hear it. Why?
when you
And
said
I would love to hear, because I'm just reiterating what you said, but I would love to hear
not
it.
quite, not accurately, but
All right, tell me why.
when they've done everything is what you've just said.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, no, it's almost impossible in life to do everything. And that's one of the language patterns that is all or nothing, like always, never, ever, all of that absolute language patterns. Very little is absolute in life these days.
Well, let's take the absolute away. Let's say that they did enough.
Well, then again, you're applying a judgment. How do you know that they did enough?
I mean, you applied the judgment. You said he did
No.
all of
I
these
didn't
wonderful
say.
things,
I'm not saying.
and then you
that
said
they
the
did
jump.
enough. I don't know.
That's what you just
they've
said.
done. No, I'm sorry.
I
I
mean,
did not just say if they've done enough. They
okay.
didn't.
So you told him that he can jump after he
Yes.
was doing all of these things.
You want to jump? Go ahead. You're going to break your legs. You're probably
No,
not
no,
going to
no.
die.
We're no longer 15 feet. We're 200.
Well, in that case, you know what? You've taken this whole thing. The language would be different. The language would be, are you absolutely certain that you want to die? Because one of the things that I've seen with people who are suicidal is they don't need or want to engage in a conversation. They're past that. They just take action. So I know when they're waiting to engage in a conversation with me or anybody, that there's some level of doubt in their mind. And that level of doubt needs to be explored at that point. That's the thing with the people with the assisted suicides. They had spent, in one case, 2 months, exploring options and coming to the reasoned approach and tracking what's happening with their health, tracking to see what's available in anything new on the horizon that makes it worth them living for. One out of the two was also leaving their body to science so they could improve the quality of life. So, hello, that's not selfish. Most of the time, and that's not pain, just pure pain based. That's choosing death, not because they all could be, both of those two, shouldn't say all, but both of them could be medicated to minimize their pain on their regression. By the way, my dad was in a coma for 14 years. Now, back in the day, there was no way we could help him with anything assisted suicide or anything. There was nothing. We just had to wait. Or if I chose to do something that caused his early demise, I'd have murdered him. That's it. And so that's definitely not what my father would have wanted, for me to go through that. I'm pretty positive my father also didn't want to be going through. In fact, I know that because he said, "Thank God, Blair, I have a heart problem and I won't go through what another close family person, friend of the family, Fred, did." Fred had a very long deteriorating issue where he chose to literally starve himself to death because he had incurable cancer. And they could keep him alive, but he degrades slowly, or he just took himself off all food other than water to keep him comfortable before he passed. So mind models and getting the clarity to be able to accept where somebody else is at is essential. But in my mind, it is, because otherwise I'm imposing my will on them. Am I imposing a will with questions temporarily? But their choice is their choice. It's not my choice. Am I saying I need to be fully informed? Partially, I'd like to be informed about what it is because I've accidentally come into your life. If you're taking your life, I've come into your life. And is it your intent? I wish to understand this to know so that I don't have to carry the burden of your death or perceive that I didn't do everything that I could have because you actually did want to live. You just didn't know how at the time. And I go, okay. And by the way, I've gone through enough of these suicide attempts and coming out the other side and then talking to people. Like by the time I was 20, I started working at Life Skills College at 21. And by the time I was 26, I had 5 people coming up to me, telling me, students that were there, Blair, thank you very much for teaching me life skills, for teaching me the mind models and walking me through some of my darkest times. Because I know I wouldn't have been alive today if it wasn't for you. And I was 26. That was mind-blowing to me. And I go, wow. And that showed me, it sort of shone a light on when people are resourceless and they get hopeless, then the out is, and they have this emptiness in their mind, by the way, where they don't know where to go. They don't know where to turn. They don't know how to think differently. So they're stuck. And the only place to get rid of the emotional pain and get unstuck is death. Well, but that is too common these days. It is too much of a thing where people stay there, locked to think differently so that they can get themselves outside of themselves more effectively. And when they get outside of themselves, they see possibility. And when you see possibility, you can usually find hope. But if you see possibility with curiosity, you'll definitely find hope. And that's a powerful cocktail. Life changes. We have to see a way out. We have to see a way forward. And sometimes we don't have that. I've been there a few times in my life. But fortunately, I'm not holding myself resourceful. I need to find my resources. And when I do that, everything changes. And that's how come I kept on creating mind models. Because that gave me a resourceful place to be.
Definitely an interesting conversation today. How can people find you?
Well, they can go to blairdunkley.com. They can find me. I've got a book on Amazon, Ultimate Mind Hacking, and they can find me there on Amazon. They can, on the website, blairdunkley.com, I've got a number of products and services that I offer there. But one of them is profiling. I created profiling based on the question concepts. And that gives me the ability to go in and listen to people's language pattern. And when they show me their pattern, when I just listen to it, without the content per se, the context of what they're talking about is almost irrelevant, but their pattern of question concepts is what I listen to. I can take and create high probability guesses or assumptions and test that out. And I believe it's all about testing. Don't believe the mind models. Test them, verify them for yourself. And when you do, everyone was designed to work, as I shared earlier, 80% of the time. And that's 8,000 times better than mindset that works 1% of the time. So that's
What is your definition of mindset?
Mindset is the way I was taught mindset back in the day is mindset is about your beliefs. and how you perceive your day-to-day existence. And if that perception of how you are is not positive, is not forward-thinking and uplifting, and you don't have those forward-thinking and uplifting beliefs in your system, your mindset will not assist you going forward. And so I go, okay, that's interesting. I had that, by the way, for 4 years because I was trained as a mindset facilitator. And frankly, for 4 years, I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. I really did. I thought it was unbelievably good until my dad went into that coma.
All right. Blair, thank you so much for talking about your work. I'm going to put those links in the description box below so people can check you out, your website,
You know what?
any social medias. One second. Any social medias, your book also. And then, of course, they can look more into the question concepts that you have referred to today. Did you have any takeaways for the episode?
Lots. I loved your structuring of your questioning. I really like that. Those takeaways.
I didn't ask many questions. So
No, you
definitely
didn't.
rewind this episode.
Yeah. But the other thing that I would like to offer, if people would like, I generally give away a free gift, and I'll make sure you have that link to the 3 E's. So it's the effective, it's stuff I went through. And it's got a masterclass, an hour and 20-minute masterclass, if people would like to go through that and get clarity on how to use the 3 E's. So that would be there. So anyway.
And if you give me any of the links via email, of course, I'll put them in the description box so people can easily check them out, masterclasses, etc. Everyone here knows how this operates. So people can go check out someone who resonates with them. If they don't resonate with them, then of course they get to make that choice, because of course I always say I'm not everyone's cup of tea and I don't expect to be, right? So you have to find the person that is going to be a good fit for you. And then once you do it, embrace them, walk the path with them, and then begin to enhance your life. So again, thank you, Blair, for coming on, spending some time and talking about your work today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it, Michael.